Here's a quick lesson about finding the midpoint. First, we're going to see how to find the midpoint through a construction using a compass and a straight edge. And second, we will use the midpoint formula as seen below. As you can see, the midpoint formula is a very simple formula. Once you have your 2 points given, each point can be seen as an x and a y, a value for your x and a value for your y if you were putting them on a graph. Finding the midpoint is as easy as adding the two x values of the two different points and dividing by 2, and adding the two y values and dividing by 2. Let's take a look. Finding the midpoint of AB through a construction. Through a construction using a compass and a straight edge, it's a very simple process. We begin with our compass. You're going to place the pointer of your compass on one of the end points that you're trying to find the midpoint of, and just make sure that you're open to more than half the distance to the other point. That looks clearly more than halfway to point B. And at this point, I could create circle A. It's called circle A because A is the center of the circle. Now, using exactly the same size circle, so I don't want to open or close my compass, I'm going to go to point B and make circle B. We now have two congruent circles that intersect. The 2 points of intersection could be emphasized. I'll put a little red point on each one. And now I'm going to use a dotted line, which represents my straight edge. You could actually draw this line if you would like to. It's actually the perpendicular bisector of AB. But in this construction, we're really just concerned with finding the midpoint. The midpoint is the intersection. Drawing a nice big red point there of the perpendicular bisector and point A and B, and I'm going to label it M to represent our midpoint. We now could create lots of different true equations, such as AM is congruent to MB. Very simple. Next, let's do the same exact thing. However, this time we're going to actually have the coordinates of the points and use the formula to find the midpoint. So you will always have scrap graph paper if you like. So I'm going to put A and B on the graph. I'm going to label my axes. This is my x-axis. This is my y-axis. A is -8, 6. So -8, +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be right there. There's point A. And B would be 4, -10. 4, -10 would be down here. And I'm going to label that B. Now, it is not necessary to connect them, but if you would like to, you always could. And basically, you're asking yourself, well, what is the midpoint of that segment A, B? Okay, so if we go back to our points, we can see that each point is a set of coordinates. The -8 is a value for x, and the 6 is a value for y. I'll call these subscript 1, my first point. The 4 is my other value of x, and the -10 is my other value of y. I'll call these my seconds. I'm now going to come over to the right part of the screen. I'm going to look at my formula and see that in order to get the x midpoint, I'm going to add my two x's. So I'm going to have -8 plus 4 divided by 2, comma, and my y's are going to be attained by adding my y's and dividing by 2. So we have 6 plus negative 10 divided by 2. I'm now going to work down. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4 divided by 2. And 6 plus negative 10 is also negative 4 divided by 2. Look at that. And finally, our midpoint will be negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. Negative 4 divided by 2, which is also negative 2. We can go on to our graph. Negative 2 would be right there. And I can label that once again M. That's the midpoint. One final thing I'd like to show you is the reverse problem. Sometimes you are given a midpoint, in this case, negative 3, 5. I'll label that M because that's the midpoint. And then they give you one of the endpoints. In this case, negative 6, 9. Negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Positive 9 is up here, and that is your A. And what they're asking for is, what is the other endpoint B? Now, I am just going to show you the Mr. Frank shortcut for this one right now. And we'll look at it, some other methods later on in the day. However, here's the method that I like, especially when it's a multiple choice question. So here, I always like to put point A on the top, the midpoint in the middle, and then point B on the bottom. I'm going to open up parentheses for each one, as each one is a point. I have my point A given to me as negative 6, 9. And in this case, we have the midpoint given to us, which is negative 3, 5. So what is point B? Well, the Mr. Frank method is like this. I look at my x value for my A, which is negative 6, and I look at my midpoint value of my x, which is negative 3. And I ask myself, if I'm counting from negative 6 to negative 3, am I counting up or down? From negative 6 to negative 3. And the answer is I'm counting up from negative 6 to negative 3. So I put a positive over here, and I ask myself, well, how many? Well, to count from negative 6 to negative 3 is negative 5, negative 4, negative 3 is plus 3. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. So then I go down between my M and my B, and I drop down another plus 3 because that negative 3 has to be right in the middle of two numbers. And I just count to myself, negative 3 plus 3. In this case, it happens to be 0. And I can also quickly check this in my head, going back to the original midpoint formula, that the midpoint x should be in the middle of my A and my B x's. So 0 plus negative 6 is negative 6 divided by 2, negative 3. Now I'm going to go and do the same exact thing with my y values. From 9 to 5, am I counting up or counting down? The answer to that question is you're counting down. So I'm going to put a negative here. And from 9 to 5 is down 4. So I'm just going to bring down another negative 4 down here and say, well, 9 minus 4 is 5. So 5 minus 4 is 1. So the other point must be 0, 1. Right there. And then I can even check that graphically on my scrap paper. I can draw a line segment right there. And I could almost use the idea of slope going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, across 1, 2, 3, 4, down 1, 2, 3. I made a mistake. Let's go backwards. I actually went down 1, 2, 3, 4, across 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, 3, 4 across another 3. There we go. I fixed my mistake.